Hey, everybody, welcome back. It is Professor Jenkins again, introducing you to week number 3 of Introduction to Microeconomics. And this week we have a interesting topic, one that's very important to the study of microeconomics, and it gets us into the nuts and bolts of understanding in more detail how the economy works. We're going to study the concept of elasticity. And throughout this introduction, I'll refer to elasticity of demand. However, in the chapter, you'll see that there are other types of elasticity that you're going to come to understand. So elasticity is a concept that helps us understand the relationship between price and quantity demanded in a much more robust way. The formula for elasticity is the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. So what that formula is telling us is for a given change in the price of a good or service, how big of a change in demand will we expect? In other words, does a small change in price bring a big change in demand, or does a small change in price give us a small change in demand? It really helps us understand the relationship better. And for those of you that are interested in math or like graphs, the elasticity of demand is actually derived from the slope of the demand curve. Okay. And if we have a constant slope, a 45-degree line, then the relationship between change in quantity demand and change in price is 1 for 1. A 1% change in price brings a 1% change in quantity demanded. If we raise the price of a good or service by $1, we would expect, and that's equal to 1%, a 1% change in price, we would expect a 1% change in the quantity demanded of that good or service. We call that constant elasticity, 1 for 1. In order to illustrate how elasticity works for us and helps us understand the economy and the pricing of goods and services, I'm going to use the airline industry. Now, if the elasticity is less than 1, in other words, the change in quantity demanded is lower than the change in price. So for a 1% increase in price, we might get a less than 1% change in demand, even if there's any, and we might even get a 0 change in demand. Okay, we call those types of folks inelastic. We call those consumers inelastic. And if we look at the airline industry, there is a group of travelers that is inelastic. Business travelers. Business travelers are typically locked into to travel at a given time and date, and they are less likely to change the amount of tickets they buy, the number of travelers, because they can't change their time and date of travel. Most business travelers like to leave town on Monday, and they like to come back on Thursday or Friday. So when they buy a ticket for travel, they really can't adjust the ticket for a given change in price. They have to be there at a certain time and they have to leave at a certain time. Now, if we have an elasticity of demand that is greater than 1, in other words, for a small change in price, we get a big change in quantity demanded, we call those types of consumers elastic. We call that demand elastic, greater than 1. And an example in the airline industry would be leisure travelers. Now, leisure travelers are quite sensitive to price, and they are going to hunt for tickets based on lower prices because they are more flexible on their travel time. In other words, they can plan their vacation around when tickets are cheap versus being locked into a certain time and date like business travelers are. So we call leisure travelers elastic demanders. And if you'll notice, the airline industry understands that. If someone buys a ticket well in advance, they're going to get a lower price than they will if they buy a ticket on the day of travel. And business travelers are more likely to buy their tickets closer to the day of departure than leisure travelers. So understanding elasticity of demand has enabled the airline industry to better understand how to price airline tickets, because they know that business travelers have inelastic demand, and they can charge business travelers a higher amount of money because they're less likely to change their travel plans. Leisure travelers, however, have more elastic demand, so they like to lock those folks in because they are highly sensitive to prices of plane tickets, and they'll change demand quickly if prices go up and increase demand if prices go down. And by understanding this, they have been able to maximize the amount that they can charge consumers in the airline industry by focusing on how their elasticity of demand relates to when they buy tickets. I hope this helps, and I hope it helps clear your way for a better understanding of how elasticity works. Please focus this week on just understanding the concept and how change in demand or change in supply is reflected in change in price. When we get down the road and we start talking about pricing, that's when we'll start to match up different types of elasticity to different types of pricing strategies. I hope you have a great week. As always, don't hesitate to call me if you have any questions. And by the way, I loved all your discussion posts last week. I love that you went outside of the business realm to find examples of supply and demand. Very helpful, and it shows that you really are starting to understand what's going on in the world of economics. Good luck, and I will see you on the other side.